months passed and we forgot our names, lost in the times, wondering. We've walked through every dimension. We are bound by nothing, yet held by everything. Remember, you are held like the stars in the sky, held like Divine Mother held. Is held. We are held. And we must remember our destination. We are held. We are held. We are held.
Okay, this is an honor, a privilege, and it's so very exciting to me that people would get to know Peter Mount Shasta. Thank you, Peter, for again opening yourself up to us. And before I introduce you for everything that you are, I wanted to recap how we came to come across Peter. So 2 weeks prior to going to Mount Shasta, I wanted to dive in a little deeper within myself. And when you ask, you're given, right? And somehow I found Peter Mount Shasta's work from YouTube, thought, oh my God, this is so great. And he's from Mount Shasta. I live so close. So I got super excited. Eventually, I found that he had a website, and I thought, oh, I don't know if he'll ever message me back, but I messaged him. And he opened up his house to not only me, but eventually to all 13 of us. So I want to say thank you so much for that, because it created, it opened up to us to something else. And then here we are in this health summit. Kind of, we took the information and, Susan said, okay, we're going to make this happen. The vision that we saw in Shasta, we have to bring it to reality, right? So you were part of that magic with us, and here you are again. So thank you for coming. And Peter, I wanted you to give us a little bit of background of your beginning stages of your path, because it will help a lot of us almost relate to you. And at one point, we're going to stop the looking for that guru and find that guru within. So if you can guide us through your life history.
Thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate it. And thank all of you that have made this possible. So, yeah, what's very funny, well, you showed all these pictures of me during my life in different places. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize I've been around that long doing all those things. And what's interesting is I started out as an atheist, even though when I was a baby, I could see people's past lives and auras and things. I didn't think of that as God. The word God was alien to me. And even when I was 5 years old, some being appeared to me and taught me to meditate. Still, that being never used the word God. That being just said, this will help pass the time, because 5-year-old little boy, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my mother didn't want me to wake her up until 7. So I would meditate just to pass the time. But somehow 2 hours would be gone just like that. So that was my introduction to meditation. But I didn't meditate to have any particular experience. This being just said, do this. And I was told to focus on the sound that I heard within myself, which turns out later to be a whole branch of yoga in India called Shabda Yoga. But so I would say I was actually, an atheist probably till the age of about 21 or 22. I hear about God, and In fact, my mother would take me to church and I would say, God, if you're real, please show me. And God never appeared to me. And people would say, pray to God for what you want. And I would not get what I wanted, you know. Actually, Santa Claus was sort of my God because I would pray to Santa Claus and I would get what I wanted, you know. But then I learned Santa Claus is not real, so Santa Claus disappeared. But I still did not experience any being by the name of God until many years later, I actually saw God. I'm skipping a lot of territory here.
Oh,
but,
no, that's
so there's a picture behind me on the wall, which is called the I Am Presence. That this was done by a woman, made a camera for Godfrey Ray King, who started the Saint Germain Foundation in the I Am activity. And I saw that picture when I came to Mount Shasta. You see it around quite a bit. It shows the human self at the bottom and then the God self at the top. And I thought, yeah, there's a picture. This was done by a man by the name of Amareya, very beautiful being. And he put a woman for a change as the lower figure. And then her, like would be called higher mental body. That's like the body you go out and when you dream at night, you go out in another body. And then you have a Christ self even higher. But then beyond that, there's this ball of light, which we call the I Am Presence. In India, it would be called the Atman. So anyway, I thought, well, they say this is your higher self. And I thought that's just
Peter, I
yeah.
want to interrupt you because I found so much value in your beginning stages of being in New York, living that cosmopolitan life, and eventually starting to hear the callings to go to India. Or I think you found Ram Dass information and it kind of did something for you. And that I find it so relatable to many of us that we feel these little callings because we see in someone else and we want to experience that. So you found Ram Dass and you headed over to India to say, okay, what is all this about? And eventually you came across the I Am teachings that are practically a worldwide thing, but just simplified in a way that the Western world will understand it. Can you share with us a little bit about?
Yeah, well, so I was living in New York City, 1969, I guess, 70. And I started at least doing hatha yoga. And I was still an atheist, but I started doing hatha yoga just for my health. Living in the city, I want to stay healthy. Well, right in the very first class, I felt energy in my body. And I said, wow, there's something beyond the physical, So I left that first class and I went to metaphysical bookstore and I said, what's your best book on yoga? And they gave me this book about Ramakrishna, and right away it's like a light went off. Something, I guess then I was ready for it, And so then there's all this talk about samadhi and, overcoming the ego and all this. It was like someone opened a door, but I still didn't really have experience of God. At least I knew there was prana, this God energy in the body. But I did hear the word enlightenment. And then Ram Dass, I heard him talk, and here was a Harvard professor, a scientist, a psychotherapist. And as he was talking about his experience, he and Timothy Leary took LSD and they experienced other realities, and they Well, Ram Dass wanted to find out if there was a way to have that experience naturally. So he heard about the yogis in India, went to India, and to make a long story short, he met this yogi. This is Neem Karoli Baba. And as Ram Dass was talking, Neem Karoli Baba knew all about him, who he was, why he was there, knew about his mother and all that. And Ram Dass really had his heart opened, and Neem Karoli Baba took a massive dose of LSD, and it didn't affect him because he was already there in that consciousness. And as I was listening, I saw a map of the world, and a beam of light came from Neem Karoli Baba and hit me in the third eye. And I heard him say, "Come visit me." So pretty soon I was on a plane and I was in India, and I managed to find Neem Karoli Baba. And it's kind of a long adventure story, but Lama Tsering talked about the role of the guru, and it's not what we always expect. So Ram Dass got one treatment, it was like meeting a loving father who knew all about him and would pat him on the head and say, "Good boy," and "I love you," and things like that. With me, he mostly ignored me. In fact, one time he threatened me with a rock, And then I asked him who my guru was because I felt he wasn't my guru. And he said, "Jesus Christ is your guru." And I went, "What? I didn't come all the way to India, to the Himalayas, to hear that my guru was in my church back home." You know what I mean? And I had prayed to Jesus before and not really felt anything. So anyway, I left Neem Karoli Baba, and I met many yogis that could do amazing things. Some of these yogis that I stayed with did not age, they did not eat. They would cook for me once or twice a week, but they didn't eat, But they knew some of them could even precipitate the food, like they knew what I wanted to eat. They waved their hand and there would be a meal in front of me, steaming hot, even though they didn't have a fire going. So, but then I'd say, "Okay, you must be my guru," but they were silent. They didn't talk, So then I wandered around India, and I eventually met Anandamayi Mai on the street in Jagannath Puri, and she did this namaste to me, which means the God in me greets the God in you. But I wrote about this in my first book, Search for the Guru. But when she looked at me, I knew she was seeing God in me. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences I ever had, because I said, "Wow, she's seeing something in me I've not been in touch with." So I went home, and I went back to the house in Jagannath Puri that I was sharing with other people. I went up on the roof, and for 3 days I meditated there. I said, "I want to see in myself what she was seeing." And her name, Anandamayi Mai, means the bliss-permeated mother. And that's what I really felt. And that was my not only introduction to God in me, but to the Divine Mother. And I was blessed to meet her 3 times and talk with her. And it wasn't till later that I left India, and I met my teacher, Pearl. But, I skipped around here. So
That's okay. I know enough. I've read all your books.
Yeah, okay.
I watch as many videos as I can. I know that eventually your visa expired and it sent you back to the States. You ended up in Berkeley, California, and you were kind of fed up again with, "Oh my gosh, I'm back into the reality of go work, get work so you can feed yourself, so you can have money for your car, whatever, all the stuff that we naturally have pressures about."
Mm-hmm.
And you experience something so beautiful in India. You come back again to this reality of like, "Oh, what do I do now? Do I have to work?"
Yeah. So what happened was I've kind of combined 2 trips to India into one here, but I ended up camped. There's a being who was a musician who was with Neem Karoli Baba. His name was Jayu Tal, and he let me crash on his floor in Berkeley. And I was just there in Berkeley, you know, it's a very materialistic place. And I said, what should I do now? You know, I had to leave India because my visa was expiring. And I wanted to just live in a cave in the Himalayas, you know, like Babaji. But Neem Karoli Baba told me to come back to the West, you know. So anyway, I didn't want to be back here. It was very materialistic. And I said, I miss the yogis and living in the Himalayas. And I thought, why not leave my body? Like some of these yogis could leave their body, you know, basically die when they wanted to. Of course, there is no death, that they would go to a higher plane. So I was praying for permission to leave my body. And then one morning I woke up and this ball of light came down into the room. I didn't realize at the time, but that was Saint Germain. And I heard a voice that said, go to Muir Woods and I will meet you there. So this was, you know, like maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I got dressed and I got in my car. It was pouring rain. I went to Muir Woods. There was nobody there, no other cars. I understand now you can't even drive there. You have to park someplace else and you get a pass and they take you on a bus. But this is the old days. I drove right there. There were no cars in the parking lot. Who's going to go to Muir Woods in the rain anyway, you know? So I got out, I started wandering around, and I found a big redwood tree that was hollow, that had been hollowed out by fire. And I got inside the tree to get out of the rain. And I sat down and I started doing Vipassana meditation, which is basically you meditate with your eyes open, but looking down, just observing the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. And this slows the mind down. Your thoughts come slower and slower. And when you have a thought, you label it thought or thinking, and then you go back to observing the in-breath and the out-breath. And, you know, the thoughts come slower and slower. You feel very relaxed. And then you say, well, who is observing the thoughts? This kind of leads to the Advaita. You realize you're the observer, and who is the observer? You know, well, this goes beyond thought completely. But anyway, I was doing that practice. And again, in the back of my mind was, I want to leave my body, but this is a big step. Before I do this, I should ask for permission. And I didn't really believe that there were masters at that point. I had heard about them, but I had been immersed in the Buddhist teachings, which seemed to imply that you merge with the Buddha consciousness, that there's no self, because they always say there's no self. So I guess when you're enlightened, there's no self. What they meant was there's no ego self. Anyway, so I named all the beings that I could think of. I had been a guest at the Theosophical Society, so I knew about the Ascended Masters, but I also, you know, named Jesus and Buddha, and then I started calling Kuan Yin and Saint Germain and so on. I named all these enlightened beings. I said, please show me if I can leave my body and help me if it's time. Well, all of a sudden, somebody materialized in front of me in a physical body, wearing jeans. They looked just like somebody who'd been a hiker, you know, about my age, in his 20s. And he didn't walk up. If he had walked up, I would have heard twigs breaking. And plus, I had my eyes open. It was just, there was nobody there. And suddenly there were 2 feet in front of me. And this being knew my name. He said, Peter, your prayer has been answered. I am the part of the Godhead that has been sent to answer your prayer. And I thought, wow, my whole life I've been praying and never had a prayer answered that I knew about. And now finally somebody's answered a prayer, you know, but he didn't tell me his name. He said, you finished enough of your earthly karma so that you can leave your body if you want, and I will help you. And I went, great, But he said, before you give me your final decision, I want to show you something. So he touched me on the third eye and took me out of the physical body. So I'm in another body that looked just like the physical body. In fact, I looked back and I saw Peter sitting in the tree, still meditating. And this is without any drugs, or I have very few sacraments in my life, and many, many years, none, and suddenly I'm looking at my body, meditating in the tree, and this guy puts his arm around my shoulder, and he took me up above the earth. And we went to this realm where beings existed as this ball of light. There was no body, just a ball of light giving these beautiful rainbow colors out into space. And there was a feeling of bliss, just absolute bliss. And I realized, I said, this is it. This is where I want to be. Thank you. And I realized that these beings were like in samadhi. There's something in India they call the day of God and the night of God. The night of God is when you're finished with all the earthly experience and you just merge with Para Brahman. You merge with the absolute, but you still don't totally disappear. There is still this focus of consciousness. So but there was a feeling of just tremendous bliss. And I said, thank you, this is where I want to be. But then I heard this crying coming from someplace, and it got louder and louder. It was very annoying. So finally I looked down and I saw the earth below me. It was just like the ball behind your head, this blue ball, but very small, It was way down there. I might have been like 20,000 miles above the earth. I don't know. The earth was just like a softball or something. And I said, what is that horrible sound? And this being was with me, said, that is the suffering of humanity. The masters hear this all the time. And if we could cry, we would. And I said, oh, I want to go back and help. And I realize now this was the Bodhisattva vow. You're offered liberation, but you choose to go back. This is the choice that Kuan Yin made. And it's called the Bodhisattva vow. But so he said, you made the right choice. I want you to help me with my work. But you're going to need more training. So I want you to go to Mount Shasta, and your teacher is waiting for you in Mount Shasta. And the first person you meet in Mount Shasta will tell you what to do next. And then the next thing I know, we left this paradise, and I was back in my physical body in Muir Woods, and there was this guy standing in front of me. So by now I realize that this is not an ordinary being. So he said, now I will show you who I really am. And he took a few steps back, and in front of me, he changed into Saint Germain. This is that picture that you showed a few minutes ago. And that's the picture. It's in the front of the original Unveiled Mysteries. And I recognized him from seeing the book Unveiled Mysteries at the Theosophical Society. And then he just faded out. It's kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, he just faded out and disappeared. And I was so energized, I felt like I'd been hit by lightning. I got up, I went back to my car. This whole thing might have taken half an hour at the most, maybe even 15 minutes. I went back to my car. There were still no cars in the parking lot. And I headed for Mount Shasta. Now, by some miracle, I arrived in Mount Shasta in about 2 hours. So I feel I was teleported there in my car, because I got to Mount Shasta. There was a restaurant called the Breakfast House on Mount Shasta Boulevard. It's not there anymore. But people were having breakfast, and I'd say it was around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. So I might have left Muir Woods at 9, and there I was at 11. And there was a sign up in the door that said, "No hippies allowed." Well, I had long hair down my back, and I was wearing my white pajamas from India, you know, the kurta. And you could have heard a pin drop, you know, this, don't you know, your kind of people is not supposed to be in here, you know, but the waitress was very cool. She had me sit at the counter, and people went back to eating. Well, then a young guy came up to me who was the owner of the health food store, and he said, "You're supposed to meet this lady by the name of Pearl." And I said, "Well, I don't know." "Yeah, there she is. That's on the book, the cover of the book I wrote, Lady Master Pearl." And so I went to his store, and he let me use the phone. She said, "Come right up." So she was like in town there, and I went to her house, and there was this sweet lady, looks like a loving grandmother, you know, and she said, "I've been expecting you." And I said, "We've never met before. How could you be expecting me?" She said, "The Master Saint Germain came to me this morning and said that he was sending you to see me." And she said, "Come in and have a seat." And she said, "What brought you here?" And I told her my experience of that morning with this stranger in Muir Woods. And she said, "Well, who do you think that was?" And I said, "That was the Master Saint Germain." And she said, "He's speaking to you right now." And I said, "Well, I don't hear anything. Would you channel what he's saying?" And she said, "I don't channel. The masters will not let me channel because that would weaken you. He's talking to your higher self. And when the time comes, you will know what to do, but you will perceive it as intuition." So in other words, he's actually giving you a message. But if he told your human mind, you would be all stressed out and it would be too much of a burden. Plus, he'd be interfering with your free will. So he's transmitting the essence to you, which you will get on a higher level when you need it. So this is actually a good message for people who come to Mount Shasta. They come here wanting to meet a master and have, you know, the master give them a message. But everyone who's sincere is greeted by the master on some level and given the guidance they need, even though you may not hear it through your physical ears, you know. It may be just you feel it, or it doesn't, you don't really get the message till like a month later. Your life takes a different direction, but it happens naturally, you know. So that's how you become a master, is by learning to get the guidance within yourself, you know. Become it. If someone is telling you all the time what to do, you become a servant, not a master. So anyway, Pearl said, "Would you like to meditate?" So I said, "Sure." So I was going to sit on the floor in lotus position, close my eyes, you know, and go like that, you know. And she said, "You don't need to sit on the floor to meditate." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yes, you can meditate sitting in a chair." And I said, "Wow, this is new." And she said, "You don't even need to close your eyes. Just let your eyes go out of focus and you can still look at me." And she said, "Turn your attention inward to the center of your being." Now, you can feel this because if I say, "Who are you?" you don't point, "Who, me?" or "Who, me?" Why do you point here? Everyone feels that the self is focused there. That's because that's where the Jyoti is. That's the sacred flame. In India, they call it the Jyoti. That's where your sacred flame is. That is the light that keeps you alive. So without that Jyoti, you would just drop dead, you know. And that Jyoti is the focus coming from the I am presence. It sends a tube of light down through the top of your head, and it's focused right there in the center of your chest. And then from there, it goes to all the chakras, and it's sending out a signal. It's telling your heart to beat and the lungs to breathe, So, in a sense, God is keeping you alive at every second. And you'd be amazed what good hearing God has. That you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to go to Mount Shasta or Tibet or India, anywhere. God hears you at every second. And it doesn't matter what name you use. You can say God or Padmasambhava or Beloved I Am Presence or Brahman or whatever name you want to use. God hears you and will respond accordingly. Now, of course, for the first, 21 years of my life, I called on God and I didn't get an answer that I could perceive intellectually or in my 3D reality. But I know now that God heard me every time. And it wasn't till later I started getting a response, So anyway, after I met Pearl, I was going to say, in this meditation that we did, I was focused here, and she told me this meditation that Saint Germain gives in the first chapter in Unveiled Mysteries, which is the book Godfrey Ray King wrote. So she said, imagine there is a sun in the center of your chest, and just allow that sun to expand, and your body is not really a physical body, it's just an energy body. And then just feel, I am the sun, S-U-N, I am the Son of God. And then she said, say, I am the living light. And when I said that, I actually saw light appear in the room. And I got very excited. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, I see the light. It was like that movie, The Blues Brothers, or I got hit by this beam of light. I said, I see the light. And whenever I said, I am the living light, it would come out into the room. And then I went back to looking at Pearl, and she just became this glowing being, like she almost disappeared in light. And she was seeing the same thing in me. And this was a meditation that she and I used to do over the years. I'd go up in the morning, maybe 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. We'd just sit with our eyes open, doing that meditation, feeling the sun. And I'm saying, I am the living light, sending light from my heart to your heart. And she would do the same thing. And that just strengthened that consciousness. I am the presence of the living God, So that's bringing that I am presence down actually into the physical body. And if you actually do that 100%, you attain the rainbow body. That's when you ascend. And there are lamas in Tibet who people have seen them ascend. And I studied with a Chinese lama, and he was there when his master ascended, dematerialized the physical body. All that was left on the ground was hair and fingernails and a robe, And I don't know, I think he took the robe with him, just the hair and the fingernails. And there were these radiations of these rainbow colors, but the master disappeared. So that's the ascension of the physical body. You don't need to actually do that physically. You can do it after the physical body dies, but it's a high sense of achievement and accomplishment to do that. And I could feel that. In fact, I feel it when I meditate. I feel that presence come into the body. That's kind of what we should be working on, is merging the physical body with the God presence. And that helps you get the guidance and so on. So anyway, after I met Pearl, I kept seeing that picture of the I am presence, but I still did not think it was totally real. And then one night, Well, the first year I was in Mount Shasta, I would wake up during the night and I would see these masters talking to me, but I couldn't always hear exactly what they were saying. I'd see Saint Germain, Kutumi, El Moria, and other masters. But when I would sit up and say, would you speak a little louder? I can't hear what you're saying. They would disappear. So again, I know they were talking to my higher self. It would have been kind of stressful if they had laid this whole trip on me about this is what's going to happen in your life and so on. A lot of people say, oh, I want a psychic to tell me what's going to happen. Well, I've had a master, Saint Germain once told me what was going to happen for the coming year, and it was very stressful. I didn't like anything he said. So just try to know what you're supposed to do in the moment. It's kind of stressful if someone tells you, everyone wants to know, oh, you're going to meet your twin ray and you're going to be rich and famous and all that. Well, frequently that's not what's going to happen. You don't want the master to say you're going to fall in love with someone and they're going to break your heart. And, people only want to be told the good stuff. So anyway, I would hear these masters, or I would see these masters by my bed. Well, one night I woke up, again, I heard someone talking to me. This happened, I think, 2 nights in a row. I heard a new voice, and I was aware there was a presence in the room. So the third night before I went to bed, I thought, I want to see who this is that's been talking to me. So again, I woke up. I'm not dreaming or sleeping or anything. I woke up and there was this ball of light like that above me. It's slightly in front of me, but like the ceiling disappeared. There was just this dazzling light and these rainbow colors. And then there was a face and maybe shoulders there. And I said, who are you? And I thought that this being was going to say, I am a cosmic master or something like that. It said, I am you. I am your own God presence. And at that point, I passed out. I just collapsed on the bed. And, when I woke up in the morning, I was just blown away. I went to see Pearl and told her what happened. And that I was privileged to have seen the I am present. The I am presence is God, So I can say, you can't tell me God does not exist. I went from being an atheist to actually seeing God and God talking to me. So when you say I am, you call that presence into action, It's like the I takes you inward and upward. If you meditate on I, who is that I? It takes you up into that. Then when you say am, it brings it out into the world. So that's how you create with that I am, or yo soy. What do you say? Yo soy el presencia del Dios, or something like that. How would you say that in Spanish? I don't
know. Yo soy la presencia de Dios. I am the presence of God.
Yeah. Now in Sanskrit, that would be aham brahmasmi.
Mm-hmm.
See, these I am teachings are in the ancient Vedic teachings, the Sanatana Dharma, but it's pretty much been lost, And again, Buddhism says, don't think about God, just think about clearing your mind, escape from suffering, like free yourself of attachments and so on, that, they felt when you start talking about God, then people get in this whole devotional thing, and then they get back into Maya, delusion, desires, all that thing. So Buddhism attempt to help get rid of attachments and suffering, which is caused by attachments to desires and things like that. But that does not mean God does not exist. Even in Buddhism, they talk about Dharmakaya. Lama Tsering mentions the Dharmakaya body. That is not a theoretical body. That is your actual I am presence, or what they, Dharmakaya is the truth body. That is the truth of your real presence. And in advanced Vajrayana Buddhism, they invoke that God presence. See, I had after my teacher Pearl ascended, I said, well, what path should I be on now? And I heard, well, actually, this Lama, Chagdud Rinpoche, appeared to me. He said, you need more training. And he told me to go to his ashram, and I took very intensive practices there. So they were chanting like in Tibetan, and I said, I'm not getting anything out of this at all. And they also said there's no self, that you shouldn't, no permanent self, and you shouldn't say I am, because that's a delusion, because there's no I. Well, I said, I'm going to leave. I'm not getting anything out of this chanting in Tibetan. So the head of the ashram said, if you try to leave, I'm going to throw my body down in front of your car. So you cannot leave. Wow. She said, I'm going to suggest read the English translation, So the next day I read the English translation. Well, what you do, you start out, you visualize the deity in front of you. This particular deity was Vajrasattva, red Vajrasattva. So that's the being, the God. They don't like to use the word God. They use the word deity, which means the same thing, but someone translated it as deity. So you visualize the deity. Vajrasattva, they say, is the deity that created all the other deities. Well, in my mind, that would be the I am presence. But anyway, so I'm trying to be a good Tibetan Buddhist now. So I'm reading the text, and you visualize this being in front of you till it becomes totally real. You have a picture of it, and you put all your energy into this being, Vajrasattva, and it comes closer to you, and then you merge with it. Now, see, in the Christian context, I found out many nuns will visualize Jesus and that they're the bride of Jesus and they merge with Jesus. Or Mother Mary. It's in many different religions, but in Tibetan Buddhism, you're doing this tantric practice. Now, tantra means just knowing that your mind is everywhere. Everything is an aspect of yourself, So you invoke this aspect of Vajrasattva, then it merges with you, and lo and behold, there's the expression, I am Vajrasattva. So you are right there in the center of Vajrayana Buddhism is the I am teachings, where you are saying, I am the presence of God. And
Peter,
I know a lot of lamas don't like to hear this, and I have friends that are Tibetan Buddhists. They don't want to hear that because, the Dalai Lama says Buddhism is a godless religion. We don't worship God. Well, that's because you are it. Mm-hmm. It's not outside of you. You become it, But the danger here is that some people skip the meditation. Now, this is where Buddhism is very important because it gives you this meditation practice to transcend the ego. So a lot of people just jump into the I am teachings and they go around saying, I am God, I am God, I am God. Well, that's the ego saying that.
I'm going to interrupt you because this
go ahead.
That I think is a gift that Saint Germain has brought to us, and that is the violet flame. And the violet flame helps us kind of, okay, let's get rid of all this stuff that is not necessary so that you can find that connection within. So I'm not sure if either we have enough time to talk to us about who is Saint Germain and what is the violet flame so that we can go into a guided practice into connecting with our I am presence. I know that's a lot. I'm not sure.
That's a whole other talk there, but I have a lot of YouTube videos where I talk about this, Okay. But Saint Germain is the one who really brought these teachings. Well, he didn't need to go to India for them, but these are ancient teachings which the ancient seers, tens of thousands of years ago gave to the great rishis in India. But he brought these to America, and he gave some of them to Godfrey Ray King in the 1930s. Mm-hmm. His name was Guy Ballard. He changed his name to Godfrey Ray King, which is, the God-free ray is king, or is your ruler of yourself, and the essence of that is really that you have a God presence, and that was a tremendous gift to humanity. God is not out there. I mean, God is out there, and God is in the church, but God is also in you at every moment and also above your head with, he said, about 50 feet, depending on whether you're in harmony or not. If you're feeling anger, God will pull away further because that energy amplifies whatever the human is feeling. So that's why it's important to be in harmony and out of the ego as much as possible. And then that God presence can come closer. Then in really deep meditation, you can feel that love within you expanding, and you can invoke then whatever aspect you want. If you want to experience the male quality of just empty mind, like, enlightened mind, just and will, you can bring the energy there. But if you want to experience more of the love, nurturing quality and the healing quality, you bring it down into the heart more and just feel, I am love. Now, the other great gift of Saint Germain was the violet fire. This is not something he created. It's in the light. When you take a prism, hold it up to the sun, you'll see all the rainbow colors coming through, and violet is one of them. What Saint Germain's gift was instructing people how to invoke that. And I've seen, sometimes it happens almost unconsciously. I've seen when I've been in front of a group and I open my eyes a little bit, I'll sometimes see violet light in the room, even if people are not even thinking about it. But if you imagine that violet light and you say, I am the violet fire, I am violet light, like I have a crystal over here. Well, it's not a crystal, it's actually made of glass. I couldn't afford the real thing, but I got this in town at Soul Connections. It's a piece of glass that's violet, and I keep it on my desk because it reminds me all day long of the violet light, the violet fire, Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I have some amethyst lying around also. And that's a reminder. So the violet quality is the quality of purification and also forgiveness. And that's what keeps bringing us back lifetime after lifetime, is we hold on to things, and that's also the gift of Buddhism, is letting go of these attachments. I think they call them kleshas, or in India, vrittis. They're kind of magnetic entities that we created lifetime after lifetime. There's like the fear entity, jealousy, anger, things like that. They're almost like ghosts. In fact, they call them ghosts in Tibetan Buddhism. The violet light dissolves them. So you imagine, like in this picture, there's a tube of light around you, and within that, there is this activity of violet light. So in meditation, you can strengthen that. I am the violet consuming flame, dissolving and consuming anything less than perfection. And you can also send that out into the world. I wrote a book about Violet Tara under Saint Germain's direction. Again, you visualize this goddess who's made of violet light above your head and ask her to send that violet light wherever it's needed. So I visualize Violet Tara above the Middle East, or above all the governments, above the White House, above the Kremlin, above the Chinese government. I call on Violet Tara to go forth today and dissolve and consume all negativity and free people of whatever is bothering them. And, Saint Germain's quality is freedom. And you achieve freedom through forgiving people the painful things they've done to you, and also asking for forgiveness yourself for the painful things you may have done to other people. But the violet light or violet fire helps to dissolve that energy, that negative energy. So it's just like you take a shower to clean the physical body, you bathe in the violet light to cleanse the etheric body,
Peter, I know that it's just not enough time to learn even about Saint Germain or the violet light. You're just giving this little glimpse.
Yeah.
And, like I said, we have the website. Everyone has a bio with their information. He has tons of videos on YouTube. But I think this is a beautiful closing statement that we're able to use this for ourselves, but the ripple effect that you're creating, and that's your service to humanity. How can you help us, give us a beautiful closing statement with that information?
I am the presence of God in action. You can say that, where I might do that, like if I'm driving and there's a traffic jam, or I am the presence blessing that person who seems to be suffering. I am peace on earth. Just to say that, instead of watching the news and identifying with the suffering, getting angry or fearful, I am the presence of God blessing that situation. And I am the happiness of God throughout this day. And that's a beautiful thing that I see the Yosoi group doing. You're helping people do something positive, to tune into the goodness, just to focus on the goodness and realize I am a good person, and I see you're a good person. That doesn't mean you never did anything bad, but I forgive you. I ask to be forgiven. Let's all work together, create a community of love, peace, and happiness. And I see this Yosoi group doing that. So I think it's wonderful. And I want to thank you. And I want to thank Matthias for having been the inspiration for this, and all of you doing your work in your own ways. I don't remember everybody's name that helped to put this on, but definitely you, Zaira, and Susan, and everybody else. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I do want to say that we asked Peter just the other day if we're having this 2024 solstice. He's going to be a special guest to us, and again, giving us his blessing to be able to enjoy summer solstice 2024 and connect with those ascended masters, connect with ourselves. Our presence will come through. And I remember, I can't forget, or the feeling of that, sitting there in the fire and feeling my multi-dimensional self, but yet I was still Zaira. I didn't lose track of me. I came back home feeling empowered, calling that I am presence and saying all those things like, well, I have that power. I hold that within myself, and I can bless the wind. I can bless the earth. I can bless the east, the coast. It's just like suddenly I didn't have to go looking for someone to tell me how to do it. I just simplify the I am with anything I wanted behind it. So thank you so much, Peter. I hope that everyone has enjoyed your session. And then two, I'm just excited that more people will get to know who you are and your connection to Mount Shasta, your connection to Saint Germain and the purple flame. Thank you so much
Thank you so much, Peter. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As you may have seen and experienced within yourself and throughout our planet, this ascension process is not easy. Never in our planetary history has humanity gone through this before, and sometimes we cannot help but ask, when will all of this chaos, turbulence, violence, sadness, anxiety, and confusion end? Let me take this moment to remind you that we are never alone. Let us reach out and realize that we have each other and we are one humanity. We are cells on this beautiful planet called Earth, which is supported by an entire galaxy. Together, We will get through this as we share our knowledge and our innate gifts to help us remember that we were perfectly created for the divine purpose of Source experiencing itself in every facet of its ever-expanding possibilities. Nothing is by accident or coincidence, and no one was made without a divine plan. Remember that you are deeply loved and you are always held.